Hello and welcome to GearHeads. My name is Jesse and today we're going to be going over the Ford 6-liter diesel and the most common reasons why they don't start. These engines have a very rich and colorful history and lots of people have a lot of opinions about them, but for me today I have one here in the shop and it won't start, and I figured it'd be a good opportunity to do a video showing you guys the most common things that I see and what I always check first. Okay, so before I run over the truck and start showing you guys some stuff with my scanner and showing you physical things to check, let's go over the two biggest reasons that I see these things not start and give a little bit more information and explanation here. And both of the reasons that I most commonly see these not start have to do with fuel, but for different reasons. The biggest reason I see them not start is because of a leak in the high pressure oil system, or potentially you could have a failed high pressure oil pump. Now what that means for anybody that doesn't know, the 6-liter diesels have two oil pumps in them. They have a low pressure oil pump down at the bottom of the engine driven by the crankshaft, and that oil pump basically runs and does all the exact same things a normal oil pump does on a normal engine, keeps everything lubricated, etc. But they also have a high pressure oil pump which is mounted up on the top of the valley of the motor in the back, so like in between the cylinder heads at the very back of the engine. Now the way that works is the low pressure oil pump feeds the high pressure oil pump, and then the high pressure oil pump takes that oil, puts it as desired depending on what the engine needs, anywhere from several hundred to several thousand psi, and that is how this system works to run the fuel injectors. It has what's called a HEUI fuel injection system. So that's a whole nother topic you could do for another day, but basically, long story short, these engines need to make, from the high pressure oil system, you need to be looking at your scanner at the ICP data, and that's injector control pressure, and they need to make at least 500 psi just to start. If you don't get up to 500 psi, it is not going to start, and there's many common reasons that this happens. So first off, one common one I see, people be driving down the road, engine actually runs great, they don't know anything's wrong with it, and then they go to stop and park at a gas station somewhere, fill up, and then start the truck up, and now suddenly the truck doesn't want to start. But if you let it cool off for 45 minutes to an hour, then the truck starts up. So the reason that happens is because when the engine's hot and running, and when the engine's already running and turning at full speed, you have enough pressure in the high pressure oil system to still run those fuel injectors without any major issues, unless it gets to be a really bad leak. But when you shut the truck off, just cranking it when the oil is hot, it does not make enough pressure. It doesn't make that 500 psi that it needs to see to start. So when you let it cool down, what happens? The oil actually gets a little bit thicker, and then you go to start it, and it might actually just make it up over that 500 psi, allowed to start the engine, and then once the engine's started, because the leak's not that bad yet, it will actually run pretty well. I see that happen very often. So if you have a 6.0 that doesn't start when it's hot, that is a very good possible reason why. I will definitely get into that, and I'll show you guys how to test for that and hopefully how to help you find it if that's the case for you. That all being said, if it doesn't start at all, that's still one of the first things you want to look at. You want to look at the ICP data and see how much pressure that system's making and make sure it's at least making 500 psi. Now if you see that and it's making several hundred psi and it's still not starting, now you probably want to look at the low pressure fuel system. And to be honest, I don't want to say they're unreliable fuel pumps, so they go bad a lot, but I do see it pretty commonly. These trucks are 15, 20 years old now, so it's not unreasonable or that rare to see one with a fuel pump that goes bad. And the way to test that is just pop off your fuel cap, and you know what? I think probably it's now time to go ahead and walk over to the truck, and I'll start showing you stuff over there. So to continue on with what I was talking about with the fuel bowl, now what you're going to want to do, just as a quick, simple test, you want to test the volume flow of the fuel pump, or if it's even flowing anything at all. So the filter head to the right here is your fuel bowl up here. Now you're going to want to use a 24mm socket. A lot of these caps have a 1/2-inch drive insert that you could pop an extension or a ratchet in. Bad idea. A lot of times when you do that, it'll end up cracking the cap, and then you got a fuel leak from your cap. So always use a socket. It's 24mm. You should have one in your toolbox. If you don't, buy one. Anyway, long story short, take this off, see if there's fuel in here. If it's low, then turn your key on and watch for it to fill. It should overflow pretty quick and fill up. If it's not doing that, then you're gonna wanna go down on the side of the frame rail and maybe tap the fuel pump module down there with something hard, like a little mini hammer or a ratchet head or something. A lot of times they'll suddenly spring to life. You should hear it too, and then it'll fill the fuel bowl right up. So that's just a quick thing to test. There is a test port that you can get to down here. It's kind of hard to get to, but it is possible if you do need to do an actual fuel pressure test to do that. I'll make sure I put a link in the description so you can find the right tools to do that if you need to. But in any case, that's not so much what this video is about. That was just a quick piece of information for you so you guys know what to check and what to look for. Now, let's assume that you have low pressure fuel. Now, what's the next thing you want to start testing for? Okay, so to be honest, diagnosing these trucks, you really need to have a scan tool. Even if it's not a professional one like I have, there's a lot of really good options there. There's a lot of tuners out there that give you a lot of data and stuff as well. Either way, you're gonna need data to look at and check a few things when you're trying to diagnose a no-start issue on these trucks. Now, one quick thing you can do real fast is crank it and look at the top left gauge up there and see if it's making oil pressure. I have seen these trucks get low on oil because people aren't checking them often enough, and then they don't start because of that, because it doesn't have enough. It has enough oil to lubricate things, but doesn't have enough oil, and it's starving the high pressure pump. So always check the oil first before you get too far and realize it was something stupid. So let me show you the screen on the scanner here and show you a couple things to check. Okay, so it should go without being said, when you hook the scanner up, always look for codes real quick. If you see a code, that can always help point you in the right direction. But for now, I've got these 4 data points pulled up that are useful and relevant to this no-start situation. Now, the top left is injection pressure regulator percentage. Now that's going to be your IPR valve. That's just telling you where the IPR valve is being commanded. And right now it says 15 because the truck is off. So that should be open. And when it gets up to about 85 or so, it should be all the way shut. Now, ICP pressure at the bottom left here, that is the injection control pressure value. And then down to the right, next to that, is the ICP desired. And that's what the computer wants to see at that engine speed and load, etc. That's just basically telling you what you should have for ICP. If your ICP values are much lower than that, you have a problem. And then the top right one is your FICM power. Generally speaking, the FICMs, if they're healthy, it should be between 48 to 47 volts. If you've got significantly lower numbers than that, and you're getting down to the low 40s or high 30s, the truck might not start at all, and if it does start, it might run crappy. So it's always worth just taking a look real fast, making sure that the FICM values are at least reasonable. The reason it's at 0 right now, this one's unplugged, and then also you notice a spike here. This ICP shows up to about 1400 psi, and that's a lie because it's unplugged. The truck actually is just assuming that. If the sensor's not plugged in, it just gives its own assumed value of what it thinks it should be. So in any case, those are the things you need to check, and like I mentioned before, you should see at least 500 psi under the ICP pressure while cranking to start the engine. If you're not getting that, you have a high pressure oil problem of some sort. If you're getting above 500 psi and it still doesn't start, then like we talked about, you might have a low side fuel issue. Also, like I mentioned, check your codes, could be something else, but let's continue on with the high pressure side of things. So we've come this far and determined that we have a low high pressure oil situation. Now there's 2 ways to go about testing this, and it somewhat depends on the year you have. The easiest way to test this, if you have an 04.5 or so up truck, they have their ICP sensor on the passenger side valve cover. You can remove that sensor and then you can put in a fitting like this. I actually had this one made. I just got a standard air fitting from the shop, and then I got an adapter fitting. I took the ICP sensor with me to a local fittings and hose shop, and they had an adapter that I was able to use to create this. Otherwise, you can always buy them online. I'll make sure I leave a link in the description for you. This is a very easy way to test it, but you do need to have a scanner that can command the IPR valve shut. There's also a way to manually do it, to manually command the IPR valve shut. I could go over that in another video if you like. Otherwise, there is information out there for how to do that. But the easiest way really is just a scanner, command the IPR valve shut, and hook this bad boy up and then start listening for air leaks. Now, I did that on this truck. but there was no change whether I had the IPR valve open or closed. Turns out it's probably because it was such a huge leak, but it made me a little bit concerned, so I actually pulled the IPR valve out as well. And I think this is a better way to test it if you can get back there anyway, because it gives you some more information. When you pull the IPR valve out, there should be a screen at the end of it here. This one's off right now. But there should be a screen here. If that screen's torn, if it has a bunch of debris in it, there's a problem somewhere, and that could be part of the reason why it doesn't want to start. If there's a whole bunch of metal in here, you might have a HPOP problem, the high pressure oil pump. If you've got a bunch of other random debris and crap in here, you might have contamination from a gasket material or something like that. Anyways, so it's always helpful to pull the IPR valve out if you can justify it. So the easiest thing that I like to do is take the FICM out of the way. Just pop your coolant reservoir forward and off. You don't need to disconnect it or anything. Just take it off, move it to the side, take off the FICM, and then also I usually like to take off the very back bolt on the right, when you're facing the truck on your right side. The very back bolt for the intake manifold also has a stud on top and a 10mm nut for a ground for a part of the ground for the harness right there. So that little thing actually kind of gets in your way when you're reaching your wrist down in there, and I like to just take it off, get it out of the way. It gives me a little bit room for my hands to reach on down in there and get to the IPR valve. So you also need a specialty tool for the IPR valve to get it out, if you want to get it out easily at least. I mean, if you have your turbo off, then you can just use a wrench, but when it's down in that, you know, hard to reach place without that specialty socket, it's going to be difficult to say the least. So I'll make sure I put a link in the description for the tool for the IPR valve as well. Now let's go ahead and get to this. I didn't show you my hands because, well, I mean, I showed you the ICP sensor. I have the IPR valve one. It's basically, it replaces the IPR valve. What you get is a fitting that has a seal on this side, and then it also has a seal out on this side as well, and it's got the same threads as here, and then you run this up to a hose to an air line so you can turn it on or off. In any case, I'll make sure I leave a link in the description for that tool as well. So that is where I'm at right now. It's installed in the truck. I've got my air line here. Let's go ahead and hook it up, open that valve, and listen for leaks. So once you pressurize the system and start listening for leaks, a very helpful tool to help you find the leak could be a mechanic stethoscope like this one, especially this one, because I can pop the mechanical tip off here, and when you put this part in your ears and you put this part just listening around, it works really well for listening to for finding weird noises or hissing or air leaks and stuff like that. On this truck it was pretty dang obvious actually. It was coming from underneath the passenger side valve cover, which is now removed. But listen, when you've got a leak, you should have this guy off here for the intake, so listen through that hole. If it sounds louder on this side than that side, you might have a leak under the valve cover over here. If it sounds really loud coming out the oil cap and you can hear it under the valve cover, it's probably leaking under the valve cover over here. If you have leaking coming from the back in the valley area, you might have a leak from your STC fitting at the back under the high pressure oil pump. I'm not going to be showing that to you today, but that is basically the places you're going to be looking for and checking when you have the leak. So generally speaking, what I like to do is hook this up, leave it until I find the air leak, and then I will just leave the tool. I might disconnect the air line, but I'll just leave the tool in here, and then I will disassemble wherever I heard the leak and continue on searching. So the next thing now that I have the valve cover off is to get a flashlight and show you guys where it's leaking. All right, let's go ahead and open that air valve back up. Oh yeah, listen to that. That sounds lovely. Hold on. Let's see here. You should be able to see the oil splattering around. Or reach your hand down in there and feel around for where it's coming from. Okay, I got to where I can just see it. So let me see if I can open this and show you guys. Oh, let's see if you can see down. I can see it bubbling and gurgling. So it's probably coming from this dummy plug up here. So maybe I should just take that out and show it to you. By the way, when you're doing this air test, make sure you take off your oil filter as well and listen for air leaking through there. It's pretty typical to hear a small amount of air coming through, but if you have a lot of gurgling noises and air rushing through, you most likely have a failed high pressure oil pump and are going to need to replace it. Now, over for this side, what I took out, I think I told you that was the dummy plug. I'm a dummy. It's not a dummy plug. The back one is the standpipe on both sides, and the front one is the dummy plug. And on this design, the old design like this, You know it's the old one because it uses the 10 mil Allens. The new design uses 12s, I believe. In any case, I took that out over there and I'm gonna show you what the leak was coming from. But while I'm in here, I will mention, when you're looking for the leaks, look down along the lower side of the rail on the underneath side at the fuel injectors and see if there's leaks there, because you might have leaks from the injector cups. Those injector cup seals also are a leak item, and if you're taking this rail off, it is probably a very good idea to replace those, and that's another thing you need a special tool for, and I'll make sure I put a link for that down in the description. And I don't believe Ford sells those individually. You can buy kits to do them online. In any case, either way, I'll make sure I put a link to all these things in the description for you. Feel free to check it out if you need to. Now let's go look and see what the oil leak was from. So here's the top half of the standpipe, and you can see it's got 3 seals, one here, and then there's one right here too. And this one, the O-ring has completely split and failed. Let me just pull it off of there. And yeah, it's about hard as a rock. In any case, this is one of the older design ones. The new ones come with Teflon seals as well that support these O-rings. It basically, if a very small amount of oil starts to leak past one of these, in a very short amount of time, it will immediately erode it and destroy it like this one, which is why he had such a sudden failure. The truck was running fine, and then suddenly just wouldn't start again. Those Teflon seals supposedly add enough support so that keeps that from happening as easily. In any case, that is how you find a high pressure oil leak on a Ford 6-liter. I hope you found it helpful. Okay, one more tip for you guys. As you saw, I took that standpipe out and only the top half came out. So to get the bottom half out, I decided to get a little bit creative. Basically, I took this tip, I wrapped the end where that O-ring used to go with electrical tape, and look at that. The whole thing actually, so I wrapped this end with electrical tape 2 or 3 times. I'll show it to you again on my tool cart once I get it out, but I'm gonna have to separate these and use both hands to get this whole piece out, and then I will show you what I did. Okay, so after some fighting, I got the standpipe out. I had to separate them, and then I was able to take off the little metal cover for the heater box, and I was able to just barely sneak this by. On some trucks, you're just gonna have to pull the engine mount bolts, and if you lift the engine, just use a block and a jack and lift on the right side. There should be a little spot on the bell housing you can use on the transmission bell housing. And if you take the 2 bolts out that go through the cradle for the engine, you can lift it up just enough, and then this will slide right out. Luckily, I was able to do it without having to do that. In any case, that's what the rest of the standpipe looks like. And these very rarely fail, that end seal. But either way, this is the old style standpipe, and we're updating the new design. I'm just doing the whole new standpipe. And the way I was able to get this out, because this piece came separated because the seal right here is the one that blew. And when that's the one that blows, a lot of times it does, obviously with a broken O-ring, it's not really holding on to this part very well, so it didn't pull it out with it. So what I ended up doing, they sell extraction tools and stuff for this. I don't have one because usually I've been able to work around it. What I did in this case, as you can see, I left the broken O-ring out of it. I cleaned the end of this up with some brake cleaner so that the electrical tape would stick to it. And I literally just took some electrical tape, I wrapped it about 2 to 2.5, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 layers, 2 or 3 wraps around. And then I installed this back in there. And when I did that, it pushed it in, and then I simply unscrewed it, took this back out, and that time when I did it, it pulled this up with it. Then I had to yank these back apart. I kind of had to twist and pull to get them separated again, lay this to the side, and then deal with fighting and pulling this out past that heater box. In any case, there's another couple tricks for you. Okay, well I hope you guys found that video helpful. Obviously it's not the end all be all complete video showing every potential thing that could possibly go wrong with your truck, but I did want to just do a quick video to cover the stuff that I most commonly see, and the things I talked about and showed you are that. So if you guys have any extra other comments to add, I know there's all kinds of other people out there that have their own experiences. Drop a comment down below and tell everybody else the common stuff that you've dealt with and that you see a lot of. I mean, we could go on for days if we wanted to talk about problems with the 6-liters. I'm kind of joking. I actually like those engines. Once they're fixed properly, then they're pretty cool. But either way, this was supposed to be specifically focused on that subject. But if there's something that I didn't cover or that I missed, go ahead and let me know. I appreciate it. I like the feedback. And if you have any questions, drop them down below. I always do my best to get back to you guys and help you. There's only so much I can do. Some people try and message me and get me to help diagnose their problem like over, you know, Instagram chat or YouTube chat, and it's like, I can give you pointers on what to look for, but I can't spoon feed or walk you through step by step for everything. I do my best to help who I can, how I can. By the way, look down in the description. I will make sure I leave links down there for all the tools and the stuff that I'm used and talked about in this video. You know, if you're gonna have a truck like this or work on trucks like this, you need the right tools to do it and make your life a lot easier. In any case, thanks again for watching, guys, and as always, keep wrenching. All right, he wants to say hi. Hi, Thor. Say hi. Yeah. You say hi? Oh, okay. I love you too. Okay. Good boy. There you go. Okay. Oh, my. Okay, I know you're excited.